working out of Central St Martin's, and he's also part of the collective Wet Hard Agency, which looks at the intersection between queerness, architecture, and the internet. So I'm going to pass over to Cleo now to talk us through his presentation.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks everyone for joining after what it seemed to be a very long day. Some people are still carrying on, but let's bear with them. Really, thank you for being here. It feels like a homecoming to me, a little bit, because I've started my architectural education here at London Met. However, at the time, I was at Holloway Road. And as far as I remember, it was just one campus full of architects. And I'm not sure what the deal is with this campus that you guys have, but it was just architecture. It was hardcore architecture, which worked out for me for a little while until I became, increasingly, needing for more interaction with other disciplines. And that eventually happened with, me moving after to CSM at the King's Cross campus. But when I joined London Med, it was 2011, I think. So, wow, like 12 years ago. So yeah, it's very nice to see these new faces here. I don't know if I recognize any of your tutors. I might need to check later. Again, thank you for inviting me, Amy, and the society. Who's part of the society here? Representing, great, thank you guys. I think it's very important what you're doing. And please, I want to extend a call from our society at CSM for you guys to collaborate. From what I know, they want to stage an exhibition. They have a space for it in spring. And they're very keen to connect with other architectural societies across schools and institutions. So please get in touch. I'll let them know, to reach out to you. But that will be quite lovely to have you guys on board. After I've seen the title of this lecture series, Anti-Apathetic Architecture, obviously I started thinking about the word apathy a little bit. And to be honest, I hate bringing those etymologies at the start of lectures. I think it's like, come on, not an etymology. But what I found hilarious is that Google's example says, can you read that from there? Can you actually see it? Okay. It says widespread apathy among students. I don't think that's happening, hence why we're here. Then I started thinking about the origins of the word, and obviously being Greek, it comes from apathia, which I think has a different meaning than the English version of the word apathy. Again, I think the main meaning of it is being free or liberated from passions as sufferings. And the word apathy has this negative connotation because basically it tells you you don't have any concerns, regardless of what's happening around you. You're not paying attention, you're not getting mobilized, you have no emotional connection to the struggles that we are facing, as a collective, but even like globally, And I want to contest that a little, in a way, and maybe I want you guys to think more of apathia, which is, it has some sort of more positive note to it. It's really about having resilience, but my practice, in a way, stems from being resilient. Being resilient against expectations, being a queer identifying individual in architectural education, and being able to carry your own ideas, even aesthetics, which is the hardest of it all, into the form. And I want to start with this lovely, lovely image that RBA thought to represent my project with, which I found hilarious. So, House of Extravaganza, Reimagining Strawberry Hill as an incubator of subversive queer space for London was my thesis project when conducting my MA at St. Martin's. And for some reason I was nominated for the President's Medal, and when they ask for this sort of images to place in their website, of course, I've included some which, I guess in a way they're more architectural, you cannot really read them, they're all line drawings. But someone in their media team chose this one as the cover, which I think it embodies everything I stand for. And this is Divine, by the way. Divine the Third, that's my drug alter ego, which I developed actually during my studies. I've done dressing up before, more like a recreational activity, but never really took it seriously, or never, I guess, understood its capacity to be an agent for my work. I think probably most of you are, in a way, encouraged to develop a persona, or encouraged to develop a mode of practice that is truly yours, right? I don't think anyone wants to get out of education and be a cat monkey. I mean, eventually we all pass through that stage, and it's fine, it's okay. But I think what's really powerful is that each one of you develops that sort of like personal take on the profession, that you find your own, or you create your own mold and you like really own that in a way. And I think for me, the drag persona allowed that space, or created that space for me. Yeah? And in case you guys are not familiar with the term queer space, queer theory, I think it's very important to do a very mini crash course on this. Yeah? Are we good on that? Anyone familiar with the term and what it means? Hands? Let's see hands. Okay, mixed reactions, that's good. So essentially, queer, the term, let's call it that it's, it's, in a way it's an umbrella term for people whose gender identities or sexualities fall outside the heteronormative spectrum. Yeah? It originated from the Middle Ages, in fact, and used to mean strange or peculiar, and came to be used pejoratively against those with same-sex desires, yeah, in the late 19th century. However, in the beginning of the 1980s, queer activists, such as members of the Queer Nation, who were advocating against the lack of action against the HIV pandemic, yeah, especially within the US context, reclaimed the term, right, and made it yours, and made it theirs, sorry. And now, we can see that the term is used to describe ideas, actions, or even architectures that reject binary systems, dominant power structures, and the status quo. And I want to refer a little bit to Judith Butler, for those that know or don't know. It's a third-wave feminist writer and notable queer theorist who wrote the seminal book, Gender Trouble. And in that seminal book, Judith posed her position that gender is a performative act. That means that it's a construct of our actions, that the more we repeat a very specific set of actions, the more we repeat, in a way, our habits, what we're wearing, what our mannerisms are, out in public, we perform our genders, something that is not inherited to us. Yeah? So it's almost like a ritualized repetition. Yeah? So in a way, she contested the fact that the assigned gender is rigid. It's something that is given to you and you have to like play with that. Actually, what if you start developing a different type of repetition and you break that? And that's where queerness comes in a way. And queer space as a subject is very much an emerging discourse, by the way, and specifically emerged in the early 1990s, following the decriminalization of homosexuality in the UK, 1967, the Stonewall Uprising, 1969, and the AIDS epidemic. The experience of the other citizen was high on the agenda, right? Of course, sometime in the 80s, there was Section 28, led by Margaret Thatcher, that in a way didn't allow for mentioning, well, I guess, the word queer or gay or lesbian or anything that has to do with queer subjectivities in public, in public institutions as well. which it only, in the last 20 years or so, it came to be removed. Yeah, and it was like a major struggle for a lot of people during that time. However, some really courageous academics in 1992, they developed a module that was in UCLA in California, and that's where I believe it's one of the first instances that queer space came to be studied within an academic discourse, within an architecture school. And I just love the title that was embedded in the module. It says, if you are in a building, in fact you're in drag. Yeah. We are, as architects, we're dressing the earth. Sometimes we do a really good job, sometimes we really fuck it up. So everything around you is a drag. Yeah? The clothes you're wearing, the architecture, the spaces you're inhabiting. Yeah? Have that in mind. And following from that, 1994, a prominent architectural historian, Beatriz Colomina, who I'm sure you all are familiar with to some extent, she initiated the Queer Space exhibition at the Storefront for Art and Architecture in New York, that she gathered a lot of prominent voices at the time and practicing architects to speculate about what queer means and what are the associations between queer and space. They aim to uncover those definitions, the bonds that united them, and the exhibition asked really, how can minorities define their rights to occupy spaces within the city, and how such space can be legitimized, given a history and a future. And often when we talk about diversity in architecture, we tend to focus a lot, probably only on cultural background of a certain community, the religious background, the ethnic background. We don't really take into consideration sexuality and gender identity. And we really need to do more. And that's one of my calls today. We need to expand the idea that we have of diversity, of what that entails, the groups of people that covers, yeah, beyond what we are taught. That was one of the posters from it, and I won't carry on because we can stay here unpacking queer theory all day. Just to give you a bit of context, my problem with queer theory, very quickly, is that it tends to focus a lot on a Western approach. Yeah, it's about the experience of the city dwellers in a UK, European context or a US context. We don't really think about the experience of queer communities in the global south and so on. Yeah, and for example, Aaron Betsky, for you that anyone that's interested, queer space is, I guess, one of the main references that you need to step in. But when you read the piece, just be aware that Aaron Betsky was writing more about gay spaces, not really queer spaces. Yeah, he was more writing about cruising parks, public toilets, the gay club, and so on. Yeah, and that's not the only things that define queer spaces in a way. And for some of you that are interested to even go further, Glitch Feminism Manifesto, it takes a much fresher approach to the subject. So, again, in response to today's theme, apathy, this movie came to mind, Times Square, 1980s. Anyone watched this before? Okay. Highly recommended. It's been branded one of the best bad films of all time. Yeah, just to prepare you. And it's led by these two heroines, Nikki and Pamela. Nikki and Pamela are two teenagers that growing up in New York at the same time, happen to be in a mental institution at the same time. Nikki comes from the streets, really. She's there after having an implication with the police. And Pamela is, the daughter of a prominent politician who at the time advocates for the cleanliness of New York. There was this big project in the 80s and 90s about sanitizing the inner circle of New York. Yeah, Times Square used to be rammed with sex clubs and outcasts and hustlers, and there was this big campaign to remove that. Yeah, and I think sanitizing city centers is not something new. We've seen this now in London with Soho. It's now what I think is just a lineup of luxury, I don't know, trainer shops and like high street stuff that I don't really know who buys this shit, honestly. So cleanliness and sanitation is not new. What I love about this movie is that those characters are the antithesis of that. They are rebellious. They somehow manage to get out of that mental institution and take up the streets. And they campaign in a way against the cleanliness that is imposing to them. And there's this really lovely scene. You have to bear with me. We couldn't get the sound here, so you have to be super quiet. Lovely scene of Nikki arriving to New York. And just pay attention, and I'll stop it when that is shown. So that moment when these two worlds collide, I think is so powerful. As you can see, Nikki's arriving to New York. She encounters the hustlers, she encounters the outcasts that make up the social fabric. And at the same time, there's this very glitzy model of this new development, freshly living and meeting with the booted and suited politicians. And sometimes those people tend to be us as well. So just having an understanding of the implications of everything that we devote ourselves and our practice to, I think is very important. And acknowledging that, development is not like a singular act. We need to take into consideration, the really rich communities that make us up, right, in a way. And my answer to apathy is disobedience. And I know I'm preaching for disobedience in an institution, which is really funny. And I want you to also see this one. Again, another scene from the film.
Apathy, banality, boredom, television. But a new iconoclast has come to save us. It's the Sleaze sisters. It's Nikki and Pamela. Get to it, girls.
This is my place. You all be visiting. Out.
Yeah, be more like Nikki and Pamela, if you can. Yeah? So, disobedience. Don't take it lightly. It doesn't only involve throwing stuff out of the window. Yeah? It can be done also in a more loving manner, in a way. And believe me, it can also be done through an institution, as long as you find those cracks. And cracks I did find because none of this work would have been possible. I guess I want to go back to my thesis project now and how that emerged. When I joined CSM, I was lucky enough to be in what we call a very visual course. It's only a handful of students. How many students, Lauren? 30? 30 max per year. And I guess that allows a space for experimentation. Yeah, that is, I guess, harder to find in a more established institution that has a large number of students. So I took advantage of that a little bit. I took advantage of the fact that the architecture school was situated within an art school, and allowed myself to be performative. After 3 years in practice, trying the office life, trying the 9 to 5, trying the 9 to 1 a.m., I was basically done, and I was ready to go back to education. I came with an agenda. I knew that I wanted to pursue queer theory. I wanted to connect with my own identity, my own understanding of the city. And when I joined, and it's still very much going as we speak, there is this very unfortunate and rapid trend that sees the closures of many LGBTQ spaces in the city, really wiped out. And there's been research developed by Urban Laboratory at UCL, 2018, that some councils like Tower Hamlets losing almost 70% of those premises. Yeah? And of course, as you know, gentrification might be one of the main actors. However, the rise of online dating apps might be one of those reasons. Being assimilated in a way into the mainstream might be one of those reasons. And for me, as a cisgender gay man, it's not really the biggest problem. Yeah? I think who really need those spaces are those on the margins. You know, like queer women, queers of color, trans folk. Those are the ones who actually benefit the most from these spaces because they tend to function as ecosystems for the marginalized. It's not only where we go to have fun or to meet our future lovers, our future exes, it's also where we go to mobilize, really. It's where we tend to meet activists between cigarette breaks and dance routines, you know. That's how it happens. And it really, there's this like undenying sense of like solidarity and community in those spaces that you don't really, or you can't really find elsewhere, I have to say. So getting deep into that research, thinking very much about the here and now, I actually decided to look back. I was very interested to know how queerness, because it's not a new thing at all, how did it materialize in the past? How did it manifest? What approaches these queers of like many years ago found in order to exist or create sanctuaries for themselves? And my research took me to Strawberry Hill. Anyone's been there? Twickenham? On the very fringes of London. So Strawberry Hill, you can see it here a little bit. That's me on the boat arriving. It's a neo-Gothic palace, yeah, but it functioned like a house to Horace Walpole. Now, Horace Walpole was a man of letters. He was a gossip of the time, a designer, and happened to be the son of the UK's first Prime Minister. That means that he came from a place of wealth, of power, and he could literally do whatever he wanted. Found this barren cottage in Twickenham, which then he turned into this palace for himself. Yeah? So I highly recommend you look into this because it's such an interesting story. And it wasn't like product of one man. He actually had a group of friends who were all like designers, sculptors, or architects, and they actually call themselves a committee of taste, which I thought that how come is this, you know? Like, they must have known at the time that that's come, like naming yourself. I'm in charge of taste, you know, and I'm going to show you how taste is done in a way. I guess where I want to go to with this is that the more I was looking into the house, the more I was realizing that Horace, building his Strawberry Hill Palace, was in fact creating a queer architectural rebellion. Because in the late 18th century, when he built his house, Palladianism was in fashion, yeah? So strip the ornament, strict order, removing anything that had to do with medievalism, Gothicness, and so on. And then Horace is like, well, F you, I'm gonna build my house in the neo-Gothic style, not in the Gothic style, but then became neo-Gothic actually. He was the one credited with introducing it. And because of that house, he actually gave birth to Gothic literature. He wrote the House of Otranto, that gave space for Frankenstein and other pieces of literature to emerge. So he can also be credited as a creator of that. And you can see here the sharp contrast between Strawberry Hill here and his father's estate, yeah, building the Georgian Palladian style. It's very evident, it's very clear. The fact that this looks slightly naughty is also, again, just hilarious. So from that, I wanted to, in a way, give life back to Strawberry Hill, or allow others to get to know that rich queer history, in a way uncover it. Yeah, when I visit the place, it still very much functions as an edifice of the past. It's run by a trust. There's no mention of the word queer. There's no mention of Horace's identity, even though there are a lot of letters he used to send to his lovers that historians argue that it's actually very clear. He never said, I am queer, but it's bluntly obvious. And the trust that runs the house now refuses to acknowledge that history. So in my own powers, through my speculative project, I started thinking how I can open it up again to the queer community. Because in my mind, it felt that it's been created as a queer palace, but only Horace and his inner group of friends benefited. How about rethinking it and opening it up to the community? So I started thinking about extracting fragments from the house and creating those spatial interventions in the estate's vast gardens. And I started thinking about the queer spaces we encounter in the city, ranging from the drag stage to a cruising park, to a bathhouse, to an archive, in a way. So all these interventions took hold, and as a process to enact what one was, but far more open. And for this I developed a whole narrative, which I'm hoping to show you a few minutes of it. However, sound problem, so try and be quiet again, yet again. Also, I want you to pay attention a little bit on the way I constructed this video. I hate my recording voice, but I actually am quite proud of using my desktop as a mechanism to, in a way, present my work. And that is why I'm not using slides today, by the way, using links. Oh, it's not working. Uh-oh, did she run out? We're on.
To that extent, at the edge of the city, Strawberry Hill is established as London's first queer palace, the house of extravaganza. Elements of its original plan are reimagined in the estate's vast green spaces as fragments. Those fragments correspond to the most common typologies of queer space in the city: a gay bathhouse, a drug stage, a pleasure garden, and a cruising park are some of the typologies that extend the stage of Strawberry Hill as sites for gender performativity. Ranging from permanent to temporary, these deplorable architectures will be constructed in their full extent every year during Pride Month, becoming the backdrops for the annual festival of the House of Extravaganza. The festival is an opportunity for visitors beyond the community to immerse in a queer wonderland and understand the spatial politics of the other citizen. The house is protected by an army of guards dressed in shiny gold shorts and big fairy hats. Their main duty is to disarm visitors of homophobia, transphobia, and other harmful prejudice upon arrival. Every hour, You can watch them stepping out of their posts and into a ceremonial runway routine that involves walking, strutting, and a lot of attitude. Behold, is not to be missed. Some of the highlights include the cathedral, an elongated structure with a breathtaking arch canopy that promotes hedonism and sexual transgression through a set of interconnected showers. The erotic activities of the cathedral are deliberately concealed by layers of mist created by the central heating pool. On the contrary, the Garden of Queer Delights is a shielded space for romantic encounters and literary discussions, an escape for those seeking deeper personal connections in the age of online hooking apps. Central to the master plan is the archive, a permanent museum for London's queer heritage. The rainbow flag that welcomed visitors to join its arms, Madame Georgia's famous neon lights, and the pink tank used during the 1995 Pride Parade are some of the memorabilia on display. The archive offers weekly guided tours of the collections in the tradition of Horace Walpole house tours. Beyond its function as a repository of queer past, the archive is the meeting ground of a revamped committee of taste, chaired by Divine and the Knight Tsar of London. The purpose of the committee is to review and select applications for new queer structures to be erected on site in predetermined empty slots within the estate. During the annual festival, a gigantic stage gets erected on the rear of the estate. Envisioned as a disruption to the mundane, the stage hosts variety shows from London's most exciting drag performers. By employing Strawberry Hill's south elevation as a theatrical backdrop, the stage is the city's greatest performance venue. Its construction is a spectacle in itself. Under the supervision of powerfully built contractors, a set of pulleys and hoists aids its assembly, while a veil of translucent theatrical curtains amplifies the building's paraphernalia. The dressing rooms and storage facilities are carefully disguised within tower-like structures on each side of the stage. Two large Gothic windows allow for a rare glimpse into the dressing rooms, so spectators can watch the concussion of drag in all its glory. When the clock strikes 12, the stage seats are pulled away to make room for raves that attract the younger and weirder division of the queer scene. For the rest of the year, the stage and its supporting infrastructure take residency in various locations across London, like Tottenham Court Road, whose vast redevelopment led to the closure of at least 7 LGBTQ+ venues. Meanwhile, at Strawberry Hill, tourists and history enthusiasts who visit the site are using the stage foundation as a meeting point and aware of its future subversive use once the festival returns. As the popularity of
Okay, it goes on for a few more minutes, but I don't think we have the capacity to watch it all. I guess I wanted to show this in a way to advocate for the power of speculative thinking, and narrative and storytelling. For better or worse, we are a representational course. That means we're not like industrial designers or fashion designers that we have full control of the outcome, right? Is not as tangible. Hence we're making scale models, we're making one-to-ones, we're making prototypes. So drawing, speculation, storytelling is in a way our tools to make something feel at least real, a proposition that it might be utopian, but has the capacity to actually be realized. And the reason why I was opening and closing files in that screen recording that I've done is because at the very end I realized I've always worked in a very fragmented way. I've jumped from drawing to then making installations, memorials, dresses, you name it. And at the time, it didn't really make much sense. I worked a lot intuitively. For example, I started commemorating queer spaces by making altars to them. first to like raise awareness, but also try and encapsulate some of the material tectonic qualities of those spaces. Yeah, and then I turn my focus on Strawberry Hill, and then the project grew. So another anti-apathetic strategy is like make more, think less, be intuitive, resist the linear process that is given to you, that research is supposed to be doing this, no, it's doing that, and then maybe that, and then it does that, okay? As an encouragement, I guess, for you guys. So from that, and looking at the time, I think I want to skip a few things, Amy, if that's okay. I guess I want to briefly touch on the fact that I started a research and design practice with a friend who I initially met through my studies. Again, the importance of reaching out to those who, in a way, master your subjects or you can learn from. So when I was researching queer spaces in London, again, for me it was problematic that my references were all based here. And I wanted to know more, I wanted to know who else is on it, but far, far away. And I ended up looking at the work of Regner Ramos, who is based in Puerto Rico, in the Caribbean. And he was looking at the closure of LGBTQ sites there in the capital city of San Juan. However, there were different forces that impacted them. The recent Hurricane Maria, like in 2017, led to a massive US migration. Yeah, and a lot of people from the queer community migrated to the US as an easy escape. Therefore, a lot of their spaces were closing. And I was very interested, and I actually went there for 3 months to conduct work with Regner. So we started as, I guess, as a tutor and student, to being friends and being collaborators. So we established Wet Heart, which, yes, it sounds very naughty, but also, in a way, alludes to the fact that we're both island dwellers. Yeah, so we come from both wet and hard landscapes, don't have any thoughts, that's what it is. And for this, we wanted to focus on quick projects, mainly research, mainly connecting with queerness, what the internet can allow you to do very quickly, and obviously architecture. So just touching on a project that we've done for the Venice Biennale, for the Cyprus Pavilion, that we are invited to participate a few years back. Based on our explorations, this time we focused on a site in Cyprus. So Cyprus is an island of almost 900,000 inhabitants, and there is no spaces for the LGBTQ community left after the closure of Secrets, which we decided to commemorate through a model, basically. I don't have time to play the video, unfortunately, it's really fun. But just a bit of context, the contours that you see here, they're of a salt lake. That specific club was located very close to the border. If you don't know, Cyprus is made out of the Greek-speaking south, Turkish-speaking north. It's very much the most peaceful conflict in that region. And Secrets was a club that will attract both communities every weekend. Yeah, you had Turkish Cypriots crossing the border to go to that place. Same with me. I used to drive 2 hours just to go there, because that was the only place on the island that you can meet people like you, in a way. And I really get emotional when I think about it, because it was such a highly political space. If only the politicians could learn from the ways we could just coexist, united by the fact that we both came from a place of oppression. Anyway, regardless of our ethnic or religious background, we still connected because of our queerness. Yeah? Eventually that closed down. The Salt Lake was actually attracting a set of migrating flamingos every year, which we thought it was super interesting. Hence, in the model, the lake acts as a sanctuary for the dance floor, and instead of people, we have flamingos represented through a cocktail stick, which is, of course, relates to the island context. There are 2 colors, the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots, happily dancing together. And the more we're researching on this, the more interested we became, because apparently flamingos can regulate how pink they appear through these orphigeal secretions that they have to attract mates. And actually scientists mentioned that that's almost like applying makeup. So we thought, my goodness, like, this is a perfect metaphor for the community. We definitely have the flamingos. They have to be cocktail sticks. Let's do this, right? There's a very small, outcome, but it encapsulated a lot of research, yeah? And it's something we're generally interested in doing. Rather than creating large gestures, it's about quick projects that actually can create discourse and discussions and conversations and advocacy. And just to close, I actually want to refer to something that is very personal to me, very special, and it's great to have one of the alumni from the Queer School of Thought, Lauren Dennis. Say hi, Lauren. Do you know everyone? No. Some of them. Okay. So last year, for the first time, we ran a module at CSM called the Queer School of Thought, and it's part of Unit 1. Unit 1 is, for us, that point of arrival, when we welcome these new students. Often these students come from, at large from the northern schools, or from universities that the focus is more on the technical aspects of architecture, and they tend to be uneasy, yeah, with what the art school can offer to them. So we went big last year, and we thought, why can we not critique the lack of queer theory and pedagogy in architecture? If anything, at CSM you have disciplines from fashion to performance who deal with identity on the daily. Is embedded, yeah? And for us it's still very much, we stick to the canon, we are unable to express ourselves as if, we grab on the fact that, oh yeah, architecture is a collective task, it's never about the individual, but actually if you look around you, we are all, paying homage to the beige architecture, like I call it, which is, of course, still very much the dominant style that we all see, and we can critique that as much as we can. But I guess Queer School of Thought was born with an agenda, and that's Lauren. And it was to really utilize, first of all, the art school setting, immerse in queer theory, think about queer pedagogy that entails who do you read, how do you act, how can you make even, right? Who are you collaborating with? Yeah? A big aspect of, for example, queer making, if you remember, Lauren, was the fact that of improvisation. If you think about the best queer spaces out there, they're the ones who are ad hoc, they are resourceful, they are DIY, no? The same way that a drag queen will just pull on an outfit in an hour because she just got booked for a gig, and they have to make something look appealing and beautiful with trash. That's what we try to do, in a way. Trying to think about what happens when you take that lengthy design process a little bit out of the equation, that you propose first, that you make something and then step back and make meaning out of it. So, of course, the school entailed visits to the Bishopsgate Institute. Again, any of you who are interested in these subjects, they have the biggest archives of LGBTQ-related histories, and in London, in the UK, in fact. And it's great fun going there. So the students were asked to develop queer cartographies. Queer cartography, in a way, is about mapping places of exclusion, in a way, where gender and sexuality is excluded. It is celebrated and bring it to the fore. Yeah? For example, let's look at Lauren. Lauren was looking in this lesbian icon and activist for Shirley MacLaine, right? And also in your project, in a way, you connected with craft. Yeah, and I think craft and queerness are long associated because, it's seen as a tool of protest. No, holding a banner sometimes is just not enough. And I think queer has really tapped into the idea of skills, of image making, to really place their positionality out there. So students connected with that. Lauren made a scarf with the name of the activist on it. And then we asked the students to go out in public and showcase these pieces, what we call a situated practice, which means that we are not removed from the subjects we're looking at. We're making a case on the spot, yeah, if we can. Then you have students who look into queer love stories, yeah, and how they manifest in public or in people's houses. And what was interesting is that I've asked students to develop a set of personas. I don't know if you can see them at the back, but they printed their portraits for it. As a mode of learning, what was it, the second or third week? We asked students to develop a character, give it life, give it a description. You can see some examples here and here. I think that's one, it's quite special, isn't it, Lauren? And it took all the team to come along and produce this. So again, it was important for us that whatever comes out of this, it's done to a really good standard, yeah? Because once you start thinking about messy ways of production, imperfections, messiness, like really, at some point you have to also think about production value. And for us, it was important to create these highly stylized portraits of these characters. For example, this student was connecting with her Iranian heritage, the fact that they were from a religious group that they've been persona non grata in Iran, so that it was a very charged thing for them. And at the time, I don't think they realized that, can I bring my cultural identity into my creative production? And yes, you can. I think it's very powerful to allow students to be themselves in the classroom, and at least that's what I'm trying to do at all times. And that can, again, shape the way you produce the work. You sensitize with it. And of course, those personas might not, lead to many places, but in a way, it was a liberating practice to think, can I assign a set of skills to that persona that maybe I don't have? Or for me, developing a drag character gave me the confidence to speak out to my tutors. By the simple fact of dressing up and owning it and understanding who that persona was, I was able to reply. I was able to have my responses ready. Yeah? So what if you start thinking about this idea of role-playing, which we do a lot, when we are the producers of the work, when we are presenting the work, we're doing it without realizing it. Yeah? What if you started really critically thinking about it? Some stills from the work. You can see high heels are used for many, many reasons. That was the behind the scenes. For example, everyone was helping, and it really created a very, almost like a domestic atmosphere at times, which was very special. Again, drawing together, we hosted contemporary artist Jack O'Brien, who, for example, gave us a workshop on improvised ways of making. We always are drawing the outcomes, we have to registering them, performances out in public, queering CSM, that's a plan of the main street at CSM for those who know, being highly visible, coming up with a manifesto by looking at radical manifestos, somehow queer manifestos even, and then students ended up writing their own, which was very special. And also trying to think about the spaces we inhabit, yeah? What will be the gestures that we make, in a way. So, I don't want to ramble anymore, I took a lot of your time. I just want to maybe go through this to get a visual taster of what that entails, and really, once again, advocate for a liberatory, emancipatory mode of practice, yeah? Don't be afraid to tap into your personal narratives. Don't be afraid to contest the system. Don't be afraid to be disobedient. And just also have fun. I think we don't mention joy as much as we as possible. So joy is anti-apathetic, I think, and fun is also